Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. Marty Kaiser, Live the Dream. This is episode 4. Hope everyone's having a good Friday and looking forward to an awesome weekend. We're in Orlando, Florida, and the heat is just overwhelming. You got to stay cool in this heat. It makes outdoor activities a little challenging. Today, I wanted to go over a few things that are kind of a follow-up to what we discussed last week with some new information as well. The one thing that I wanted to spend a few minutes on are these changes in the real estate industry that were brought on with this proposed settlement between the National Association of Realtors and the various lawsuits that are going around the country and the Justice Department's oversight. As I mentioned previously, the changes will be implemented in the Orlando market effective August 6th, which is next week. The interesting thing about that is the settlement offer that the NAR has made to the plaintiffs and the Justice Department, the Justice Department has not approved it yet. And they probably will not give an answer on it based on what I know until late November or December. And there's no guarantee even that they're going to accept the settlement in its present form. The Justice Department kind of has a mind of its own when it comes to the real estate industry. So there's a lot of scuttlebutt on they may want some additional stipulations. Nobody really knows. So we're obviously anxiously awaiting the outcome of that. What kind of bothers me and a lot of my associates in the real estate industry is that our local board of realtors, or what we call the MLS system in Orlando, is requiring us to make changes effective August 6th. We've already had a lot of confusion with this. We've had different drafts of new forms we're going to have to use. We may have more drafts of forms between now and the 6th. But whatever the case may be, we're implementing these changes with no legal requirement to do that, and our settlement offer hasn't even been approved. So from my way of thinking, we're being kind of preemptive on this, and we're coming in kind of from a position of weakness. We're making changes with the hope, expectation that the Justice Department is going to approve our proposal. However, if they don't approve our proposal, then we're going to have to make additional changes. So it's just creating a lot of unnecessary stress for people, having to learn different forms that could change. Who knows how often they're going to have to change. It's kind of a continuation, in my opinion, and a lot of people that I deal with in the real estate business, that we've gotten a National Association of Realtors and our local board who has not really done a great job in representing individual agents and brokers' interest. What do I mean by that? Well, it's a strong thing to say, as obviously I've been in the real estate business for a long time, and as part of being a realtor and selling real estate, I had to belong to the various boards where I practiced real estate. And of course, that came under the jurisdiction of the National Association of Realtors. It's kind of what I call a forced union. If you want to sell real estate and have the realtor logo, you must belong to those organizations. So what you're doing is you're paying a lot of fees and you're relying on them to represent your interest. The flip side of that is if you're not happy with the way they're representing your interest, your options are limited, because it's quite hard in our industry up to this point in time to effectively sell real estate on a professional and larger scale and not be a member of the National Association of Realtors and your local board of realtors. Kind of our dissatisfaction with the powers to be probably started, give or take, within the last 10 years or so, as we've ceded a lot of information and control to these third-party entities such as Zillow and some of the other information providers. I admire Zillow because they kind of got into the real estate industry from an informational standpoint and have created themselves to be a huge and powerful entity. And basically, one of the things they've done, which I think bothers most agents, is they resell the information that realtors provide them back to the realtors. And what I mean by that is, when I list a property and I put it on the market, obviously I want to give my sellers the most exposure I can do on an international basis. So some of the things that I do include having Zillow pick up the listing and other third-party vendors such as Realtor.com, Trulia, Redfin. There's a lot of these various groups. Well, what Zillow has done most effectively is they solicit agents like myself and they say, hey, we're going to give you buyer leads and we're going to do it in the zip codes of your choice and we're going to charge you a certain monthly fee. So what that means basically is when a buyer makes an inquiry about a particular listing, let's say they make an inquiry about a listing in Dr. Phillips, and that's in zip code 32819. So the agent or agents that are paying Zillow to get leads for zip code 32819 would get that lead. Well, the information for that listing and the listing itself was generated from the agent for that listing. So Zillow's getting that information and then reselling it back to agents. There's just something intrinsically wrong about that. And that's just a brief example. The agents themselves really have had no opportunity to vent their opinions or get represented most efficiently. So, for example, with this different litigations that I've mentioned that have occurred, the NAR, from my perspective, is seemingly just, they're buckling down in terms of giving a large payout to these entities. And the way business has been conducted through the realtors and the MLS system has been this way for approximately 100 years. And in my opinion, no system is perfect, but I think it's done a pretty effective job of assisting buyers and sellers in the sale and purchase of realty. And there hasn't been really a lot of confusion on how commissions are paid and what each side of the transaction makes. It's designed to be a pretty transparent system. And I think buyers expected to pay a fee to their broker listing agent for representing their interest and selling their house for the best price and terms possible. And the agents who had a different real estate company helping them, who was acting in the form of assisting the buyer, they didn't have to pay the buyer's agent a separate fee. Well, the reason that seemingly that was a good system is because you're dealing with a lot of first-time buyers or buyers with limited funds. So a lot of those folks didn't have any extra money during the purchase process to pay an agent in addition to paying the other fees. For example, let's say you buy a $400,000 house, and let's just say for argument's sake, you put down a small down payment. So let's say you put down 5%. So that would be a $20,000 down payment. Then you potentially would have closing costs. So those would average maybe an additional $10,000. So right off the bat, you're paying $30,000 and you're putting down a small down payment from an industry standpoint. And if you had to pay your agent, now you're paying them an additional amount of money on top of that $30,000. So the old system, for the most part, eliminated that buyer having to pay the agent. Now with this new system, it's kind of muddied the waters. It's created a lot of different alternatives, and some of the alternatives may require the buyer to pay their agent, and this may restrict what buyers look at, especially for first-time buyers who are the ones that are most needy of getting as many things going right for them as possible because they want to break the rental cycle and they want to become homeowners, build up equity, build up roots for their family. If they have children, stay in the same school systems that the people want to select for their kids. And it's the way that we get upward mobility. At the same time, when a first-time buyer buys a house, then usually the person that's selling that house to the first-time buyer is able to possibly buy a larger or a more expensive house. So it's a kind of self-perpetuating system that enables people at all income classes to thrive and generate not only permanence, but build up some equity for themselves. So as part of their overall financial plan, it puts them in a stronger economic position. But all this is going to be changed a little bit. It may or may not be as dire as I'm alluding to, because nobody really knows how this is going to shake out. The only thing we're sure about is there's going to be a lot of changes during the first 12 months of implementation. That's why you're starting to, in the near future, you're going to get competition for the National Association of Realtors. There's going to be other organizations. Right now, there's one or two that are supposedly going to come out in the next 6 months that are going to challenge the National Association of Realtors. And they may ultimately have enough of an impact where the National Association of Realtors will either lose a lot of members or possibly they may cease to function, because it's kind of like college football. Because the NCAA mismanaged how they oversaw the universities with intercollegiate sports, as well as the football players not necessarily being treated equitably and being able to share in some of the things that the universities and the NCAA were profiting from the athletes in college. That whole system is now changed upside down, and it's really impacted the NCAA, and their power is quite diluted. And they may cease to exist in the next few years the way that the trends are going in intercollegiate sports. So the only thing I can say overall is that it's a little bit of a confusing time for agents. It's requiring agents to really focus in on not only becoming expert in these changes, but being able to explain it in a fashion to their customers that is going to minimize confusion. There will be some confusion, but we're trying to minimize confusion. I know I've brought this up with several customers of mine recently, and it takes me a while for the customer to fully understand the implications of this. They've all asked me, well, why are they changing that system? Because the system works good. I've bought various homes over the years. I've never had to concern myself with compensating the agent that helped me find a home, and I don't understand it. In most cases, from what you're explaining to me, there will be compensation to the person assisting the buyer, but you won't be able to disclose it in a fashion that's as simple as it has been previously. That's neither here nor there. It's just I'm venting some frustration on this on a personal level. I've just been very disappointed that I don't feel the agents and brokers have been optimally represented. And we pay a good amount. This is like being in a union. But I think a good union takes care of their workers, and there's reasons for unions. Where in our situation, we're 1099 independent contractors, but we still have to basically join, for lack of a better term, a union that we have less say in. Enough of my ranting about that. We'll see how things go, but remember this date. So when you're going to talk to an agent, every agent is going to be bound to go over the new changes starting August 6th in terms of how that's going to affect buyers, what kind of new paperwork buyers are going to sign with their agent, and it's going to affect sellers, of course, in the way that they offer compensation and some of the different options that they will have. Kind of tied into that is what I call the affordability index in real estate. And what do I mean by that? You've probably read a lot recently about buyers having a lot more concerns about affordability. The reason that they have concerns and why it's playing out in real time is that prices have gone up significantly throughout most parts of the country, and interest rates have gone up quite a bit. So we'll focus on Florida since that's where I practice real estate, specifically the Central Florida, Orlando area. Our median price approximately is $400,000 now, which is a lot higher than it was a few years ago. At the same time, over the last few years, interest rates have gone up to approximately 6.5% to 7.25%, where if you remember a few years ago, they were around 3%. So they've doubled. So what does that mean for a buyer, especially a buyer that's purchasing their first home? Well, their purchasing power has gone down because now in order to get a foothold in the industry, the median price has gone up significantly. And because the interest rates have gone up significantly, that increases their payment a lot. So what that has done in essence is it's eliminated a certain percentage of first-time buyers from being able to afford something. And then for other first-time buyers, they've had to scale back what they wanted to buy. Maybe they weren't able to buy it in their favorite area. Maybe they had to cut back on the number of bedrooms the house had. Maybe they had to cut back on the year build of the home. It just had a lot of ramifications to customers. And the reason that I bring that up is because I have interesting discussions with people. Like I've dealt with a fair amount of customers over the past 12 months that have said to me, we're going to wait to buy. And the reason that they give me is we want to buy desperately. We want to get a house so our kids can grow up in their own property. We want to achieve the American dream. We want to build up equity. But we just don't feel it's a good time to buy because prices have gone up and interest rates have gone up. So we're going to wait until those barometers come down. And while I understand their logic, I don't really agree with it. And I've tried to share that with them. And some people I've been very effective at them understanding my point of view and purchasing something. Other people are waiting. And in certain cases, they're regretting waiting. And I'll give you a quick example. Let's say you're out looking for a house. So we'll use that magic $400,000 price, and let's say you're paying a 7% interest rate. So your payment, let's just say for argument's sake, for that type of house, I don't know, is maybe $2,500. And I'm just throwing a number out for this illustration. And the buyer says, well, I can afford that, but I'd rather wait until I get a better value. So I give them my illustration. Well, I understand that, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, but think about this. We know at some point interest rates will come down somewhat. How much they come down is subject to opinion. In my opinion, they're going to gradually come down over the next year, year and a half. But they're not going to come down, I don't think, what people are hoping for. They may go down to 5.5% or 6%. So that will affect their payment on a positive nature, but not to the degree that the buyers think. At the same time, when the interest rates start to come down, there's going to be a lot of perception by people, oh, I've got to buy now and take advantage of these great values. And perception is reality. So what's going to happen is your demand for real estate is going to increase significantly. So a buyer today, let's say, that's looking at a $400,000 house at current interest rates is going to have a lot less competition, and they're going to avoid a lot of times bidding wars. And it's actually, in my opinion, a better time to buy now than waiting a year, year and a half, whatever the time frame is. Because when they go out to look at that time, instead of having one buyer they're competing with, maybe they'll have 5 buyers they're competing with. And at the same time, instead of that price being $400,000, it might be $430,000. I always correlate that to kind of a supply and demand that you learned in Economics 101 and 102. The more supply you have, then prices tend to stabilize or decline. The more demand you have, then prices are going to go up. And there's basically kind of what I call an inverted relationship. So when you have more demand than supply, prices go up. And that's exactly what's going to happen when the interest rates go down a little bit. The prices are going to go up. And so for somebody that buys now, when the interest rates go down, then they can simply refinance. So they're getting the best of both worlds. They're buying at today's prices, but when they refinance, they're going to get a lesser interest rate. So they might pay a little higher payment for a year, year and a half, but then when they refinance, they can lower their payment, and then hopefully they'll keep that house for a good period of time where that'll make financial sense for them. So these are the issues that take time and patience to explain to people, and why I feel it even gives more credibility and value to not only hiring an experienced agent, but someone that can explain it in a detailed and concise fashion, make it understandable to their potential customer, and be willing to take the time to go over these things with customers. My personal philosophy and way that I've always done business is that I always try to take more of a consultative approach. And what I mean by that is whenever I can and whenever my customer is agreeable, I like spending time not only getting to know the person, I want them to get to know me. And then I want to share information. I want to answer their questions. I'm going to give them my opinion as to, based on the information they share with me, how do I think we can best accomplish their objectives? I always try to use an analogy. If you had some type of potential physical ailment, you're going to want to go to a doctor that does a couple things. Number one, that doctor's a specialist in the field that you might have an ailment in. Number two, that doctor is willing to spend time with you to explain to you your different options, answer your questions, explain why he or she recommends a particular course of action, whether it's getting on a particular medication, can you do things organically without going on as many medications, or why they're recommending surgery to you. Do you have an alternative to surgery? What are some of the side effects and recuperative things that you're going to go through with surgery? You want a doctor that's going to spend the time giving you options and, in your mind, obviously looking out for your best interest. The medical industry is also interesting now because insurance companies, unfortunately, have too much control. So a lot of doctors are so under the gun, they want to get patients in and out like a mill system. And I don't know of anyone that wants to be treated like a number when it comes to your health. By the same token, Realtors should operate the exact same way. They should be willing to spend the time, be transparent, answer your questions, and give you the necessary information for you to make an informed decision. Unfortunately, I see a lot of agents in the industry that don't want to spend the time with their customers. Why? Well, it's a couple reasons. Number one, they just don't want to spend the time. I deal with a lot of new age agents, and what do new age agents say? Well, I need time to myself, so I don't take phone calls after 5 o'clock. I'm not going to spend an hour to an hour and a half explaining things to customers. Or maybe they don't know enough to do a good job educating their customer. On the flip side, someone that has shared ideals to me, I think is going to do a superior job for their customer. At the same time, the customer will feel that that agent is worth whatever the fees are because they're imparting a lot of knowledge and expertise. And this is a frustration of a lot of people in the industry, is that there's a percentage of agents in the business that have just not done an effective job of doing the things that I'm suggesting. I do think with all the changes that we're going to be experiencing in the business, with all these potential legal changes, that you're going to see about 30% of the agents in the next couple of years go into a different occupation. We do have a lot of agents in the business, and it probably will be a good thing for about 30% of them to look for other occupations. One thing that's true in the real estate business, like it is in a lot of other sales and marketing occupations, about 15% of the agents make 85% of the business. And that's really true because those 15%, in a lot of cases, they know more, they work harder, they stay on top of things, they're more effective at marketing, and in the long run, they're the ones that are being more successful in the business. You would like a little bit more of a dispersion because the average agent nationally on an industry basis does not make a ton of money like people expect. And so, they struggle. And I don't see that changing in the short term, unfortunately. So hopefully I've given you a little bit of background about kind of why these changes are going to be occurring, how an effective agent or someone like myself chooses to operate in business, how we can generate value to you and let you be comfortable that not only are we doing a superior job on your behalf, but we actually care about not only doing the best that we can for you, but treating you as we want to be treated. And that's always what I endeavor to do. And that's always what I try to explain to people that I'm mentoring. And I will continue to do that. On a different note, I wanted to talk about the Olympics for a minute. A lot of you have probably started watching the Olympics. They've been going on for about 7 days, I would say. Obviously, for the most part, our citizens are highly rooting for the United States athletes. The Olympics are interesting. They have a lot of events that nobody's familiar with or doesn't follow. But every 4 years, everybody gets interested in different things. I know myself on a personal level, some of the things that I want to give credit to and that I've paid more interest are gymnastics, especially on the women's side. Simone Biles is just phenomenal. I think she's 27 years old now, and this would be her third Olympics. For those of you that remember, she was going to be in the 2020 Olympics, but she was kind of overwhelmed with personal anxiety and made that public, and she dropped out of that Olympics. Well, she's regathered herself, and she's a much more happy and I think relaxed person, and her skills are unchallenged. She's by far, in my opinion, the best female gymnastics person that we've had up to date. And she's just doing great in these Olympics. In fact, the U.S. women's team just won a gold on the team competition. And I believe Simone is involved in 3 or 4 finals. So best of luck and congrats to her. On swimming, again on the female side, Katie Ledecky, who you've probably heard her name, I think this is her 4th Olympics. And she just got a gold, I think, in the I think it was a 1,600 meter medley where they swim in all 4 strokes. And she won by half a pool length. I mean, just a phenomenal performance. And I think she's got a chance to set the all-time record, not only for women's medals, but possibly for any swimming. I'm not sure if she's going to, I think maybe Michael Phelps, who was a famous male swimmer, will be the only one ahead of her. But not only has she done a phenomenal job, but swimming is such a ongoing and difficult sport because the training and effort and diet that goes into that is very difficult. And I believe this will be her 4th Olympics, and she's 27. So for swimming, believe it or not, that's considered an older age. Lastly, but not least, is the USA basketball team. That's a compilation of the USA NBA stars, and we've got a power-packed team. Arguably, this is our 2nd best team behind the Dream Team in 1992 when we had Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and those folks. Today we have some of the people that you're probably familiar with are LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, and the team that comes in for the 2nd team, they're as good as the 1st team. So far in the first couple games of competition, they look really powerful. So I wanted to give a shout out to them and wish our U.S. athletes the best of luck. This is all for today. This is Marty Kaiser signing out. I did want to say, please tell your friends and family about our podcast. We would love new viewers. Please let me know feedback, questions you have. If you want any other topics discussed, you can reach me at marty@floridasells.com. Stay cool and have an awesome day. Out.